You know, you've said previously in other interviews that a lot of the VFX stuff comes from the books for you. That's where you start, like, this visual language from. And I was curious if you had a relationship with the books before coming onto the project. You know, if you were a fan before, what that was like, what your experience was like.
I knew of the books. I had not read the books. However, obviously I'm working my way through the books.
Yes.
And I think the size and scope of Wheel of Time hit home on me almost instantaneously when I had the audiobook and saw that it ran for like, I don't know, something like 26 hours or something like this. So I knew there was obviously going to be a lot of material there, and there certainly is. Robert Jordan goes into a lot of description. And it's a really kind of interesting story to look at. It's kind of repeating of ages and things like the Age of Legends and stuff like this. So for me in visual effects, it's really interesting because fantasy and sci-fi work, I think, is probably the pinnacle of creativity in visual effects, because there's just such a length and breadth of different possibilities you can do, and you know, the books are always a great starting point. I'm very lucky that I've got Sarah Nakamura on the show, who's our book expert, who I can always refer to when I've got questions. But at the same time, you also kind of evaluate, well, is what's written there, is that going to look visually interesting on the screen? You know, there's several different kinds of portals and gateways and things that exist in Wheel of Time, and there's quite a few times I've noticed that Robert Jordan describes it as a white flash of light. So obviously I feel like I can't really do that for every single sort of gateway or portal within the show, so I always try and tweak it and come up with something maybe that's a little bit different or relates to some other aspect of the show. But I'm really, really lucky in the fact that there's just so many different creative challenges in the show that it's certainly not boring. It's probably one of the most satisfying projects I've ever worked on.
Is there anything from the source material that you really wanted to be on the show that you haven't been able to put in there yet?
I don't think there is yet, because obviously season 2 is my first season. I was able to put on the books quite a bit, and there were certain creative challenges as well, but you know, say like the Heroes of the Horn, I was very eager to still give a kind of mystical fog moment, because obviously it's very it's described quite thoroughly in the books about the blowing of the horn, but I had obviously another moment in the show where earlier on there was a fog created by the White Cloaks to invade the city, so it's all about trying to take what's there in the books and tweak it, make it a little bit more individual from each other. I was mentioned about the kind of portals and gateways and things like this, but no, I think for the most part we've always managed to get what we wanted from the books in there, and then there's just sometimes where what's written in the books, as I was saying, you can't really convey, such as Perrin with his wolf vision. You know, it's a much more of a visual almost hallucination in the show. So you know, in those instances I kind of have to take a different approach.
Was there anything that you really wanted to bring to the screen from the books, you know, but it's like it just couldn't do it? And then what's one of the things that you wanted to bring in? You're like, yes, you pulled it off.
It's probably everything that revolves around channeling for me. It's such an important and unique magic system to the show, and I had certain challenges where there was a certain look established for season 1, and when I joined the show, that was kind of one of my first priorities, was the channeling and what I could do to improve that. There's a big expectation on it. There's a lot of intricacies with taking threads and weaving them and things like this. So I think that where I am with the channeling is kind of a very good starting point, and everyone seems to have reacted quite positively with it, with this idea of, as I've said, I've been very literal with the interpretation of threads of power, but the colours, bringing those in was a really, really important decision, I felt, because it's a way of describing the different elements that they use, especially in weaves. It's very important to the fan base, as I found out from like my early research. And then just talking about it to Rafe, you know, we came to the decision that we could do it, but I think we always need to be a little bit careful that it didn't become too overbearing, too saturated. And I think even in the books it's described as being tinged with colour. So I think there isn't anything I'd say that I haven't done for what's in the books, but it's more a case of working what we have now even closer towards how some things are described. And I think the channeling is one of those. I'm really excited about how we go on and develop that and bring more nuances to it and more sort of levels of detail and subtlety.
Two-pronged question. Obviously there was a strike. You had started on season 3. So the first prong of that question is I'm wondering if it impacted your timeline. But 2, the thing I'm really most curious about as a fan is that you are constantly sort of expanding this universe and growing it out. And I'm curious about sort of the challenges or the thought processes around not being able to sort of create new things for the same place, but we're creating new places with new things constantly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So I think with regards to strikes that are happening, it sort of doesn't affect me because I've got a big challenge with Wheel of Time and the fact there's a lot of visual effects involved with the show. So I have a lot of different objects, things, places, magic, creatures that I have to sort of research and look into and things like that. So my time is completely full without any sort of possible disruptions happening. What was the second part of your question?
The second one was I'm just really curious because you're creating. Obviously, season 3 is going to be book 4, a little bit of book 5. These characters are moving around constantly. They're going to new places. Your world and the locations are expanding. So instead of being in a singular place where you get to create new material for that place, you are having to build new worlds each time you go through a season. So I'm curious about sort of the challenges of having to like some shows, they're in one place and you build for that, but this is like you building multiple worlds for the same show. So I'm curious about the challenges of that.
I personally wouldn't call it a challenge. I call it kind of an exciting opportunities more than anything, because you move around so much. It means, for me, working on the show and for the VFX vendors, they're always involved with something new. Therefore, that the motivation for the show and the excitement for the show is constant. It keeps going and going and going because we have all these new things that we work on all the time. And for someone who's kind of artistic, it's incredibly creatively satisfying in that regards. And I'm very lucky with the other heads of department I work with on the show. We all work very much as a team. And from that, we can all sort of create the imagery, create the places for the magic. It's certainly not a challenge. It's kind of something I kind of embrace more than anything. Because as I say, the books themselves have got such a huge amount of material in them that I think it's going to keep us very busy.
I was going to say, you don't feel overwhelmed by that? I would feel slightly overwhelmed.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right.
No, it's great. It's great when you can kind of have all these creative sort of I would say briefs required, but it's almost kind of within the hundreds of different type of things we've got to go there and create. And for me, that's just so interesting and satisfying. You're never going to get bored of it.
You clearly have a real passion for this.
Yeah.
What came first? Your passion for this genre, or did working in this genre and this type of fiction spark a passion in you for like the sci-fi fantasy and the visual?
Bit of both. I've done a mixture of shows over the years. As an artist and a lead and as a visual effects supervisor, from sci-fi to things that are kind of more grounded and real. We are sort of recreating things from the real world, and there's no sort of stylized or make-believe components of that. I was always on the lookout for a fantasy show because, as I said, for someone in visual effects, or for me, it's the pinnacle of kind of creative challenges because of what that involves, and it's you have to be your imagination has to be certainly sort of flexed and made use of. So I think it's extremely easy to get passionate about the project because of my desire to work on a fantasy show, because of the creative possibilities of it, and then with the Wheel of Time, because it's massive and it gives you so many different opportunities with the things you can work on that just kind of came together. And as you can tell, I quite enjoy working on the show.
And to piggyback on that, the show shoots in the most amazing scenery. Like, I want to do a world tour of everywhere that the show shot.
I'm pretty sure we could arrange that.
When you're doing special effects, on top of that, how do you find the balance of not basically erasing everything that's real to create a digital environment, but to build upon that to enhance the
for me, the visual effects is at its greatest strength is when you are complementing and working with a real world object or location that's shot in the camera, and then we build and expand on that. It's certainly when I've had the most success as a visual effects artist, and it's a sort of desire of Rafe that we shoot in places where people can interact with the objects and stuff like this, but then visual effects step in and we help then open up the world and bring in maybe the more spectacular moments of it, and that for me is what visual effects is about.
Can you talk about, so in 208 there's this big battle, and Brian alluded to it a little bit and said you could talk more about it. Can you talk about what it took to actually bring that to the screen? Like, how long did it take to shoot? Any details?
The battle in general?
Yes.
I mean, the majority of that was shot in Morocco over the period of about, I think, 2 months. We were there shooting in, I would say, about four or five different locations around Morocco. I think the biggest challenge about that was for film that was shooting at several places around Morocco. So the high sea wall was shot in Essaouira, which is obviously on the west coast of Morocco. Then the front gates and the centre of the city, the streets, is shot in Ouarzazate. And even when Ouarzazate, that was spread over 2 different locations. So the biggest challenge is taking all those different places and bringing them all together to try and make it a very coherent and gel together city where you don't recognise that it's been shot in all these different locations. And part of that is down to the work that Andre, production designer, does. And as I said, then I work in conjunction with that and help to sort of fill in the missing pieces, so to speak.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you guys. Nice to meet you.